As the complexity of Yu-Gi-Oh increases, so does the length of card text on the average card. Today we'll be covering 10 cards with some of the longest text in the game, what they do, and why they're as wordy as they are. And rolling into number 10 is Gunkan Suship Shari. This premium meal takes the form of a level 4 normal monster, and even though it doesn't have any effects, its flavor text is the longest of any non-effect monster in the game. Clocking in at 116 words, it manages to surpass some of the most complex cards in the game in terms of word count. And instead of being a rules nightmare, it just describes a customer leaving a positive review on the Gunkan Suship sushi shop. In universe, this shop is well known for its excellent quality shari, while shari referring to rice specifically used for making sushi. The reviewer very obviously enjoyed their meal, stating that the ingredients were perfectly balanced and the atmosphere was very classy and enjoyable. However, they only gave it 4 out of 5 stars since the natural seaside environment outside the shop is noisy. This is realistically out of the restaurant's control short of changing locations, and a parody on how bad restaurant reviewers will sometimes leave poor reviews for reasons irrelevant to the restaurant itself. In addition to the humorously strict review, Gunkan Suship Shari's text also hinted at the future release of Gunkan Suship Shari Red, with the owner telling the reviewer they intended to introduce a new, rich red vinegar to the menu in the near future. Having this many words on a card that could literally have an empty text box without changing how it would be played is a feat unique to the Gunkan Suship Shari, earning it a deserved spot on this list primarily dominated by monsters with long-winded effects. And today's video is brought to you by Factor. Factor is a meal planning service that sends you complete meals. All you do is just heat it up and they're good to go. With summer being as hot as it is, it's nice to not have to run out and get food as much. Factor meals are so convenient I don't have to worry about making lunch or dinner. I simply grab a prepared smoothie or keto shake for a quick snack. And when hunger strikes, I just heat up a chef quality meal in just 2 minutes, like this truffle butter filet mignon, without any prep or cleanup necessary, which means less work for me. And since I've been actively working on my health, I found that Factor meals make it easier to stay on track. Specifically because it's the only healthy foods I eat that taste good and are fast because I don't like cooking. I basically get all my sources of veggies from just the Factor meals I get each week. With meal preference options like keto and vegetarian and over 27 meal options every week, you can also find whatever your preferences are. Thanks to the wholesome and nutrition meals provided by Factor, I'm able to stay away from fast foods more easily. And because I'm staying away from fast foods, I've seen improvement in my workout and weightlifting. Factor meals are an essential part of my routine, providing me with food I need to accomplish my goals and the convenience to make it all happen this summer. If you want to give it a try, use my link or go to gofactor75.com and use my code POGDuelAugust50 for 50% off your first box. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code with your phone. Hit me up on Twitter once you give it a try and let me know what you think. And rocking at number 9, we have Lord of the Heavenly Prison. This is a level 10 dark monster with 3000 attack and defense and uses 117 words to describe its 3 effects, of which you can only use once per turn. You can activate its first effect during the main phase to reveal Lord of the Heavenly Prison in your hand until the end of your opponent's turn. This enables a continuous effect to protect all set cards in the field from being destroyed by card effects while it's being revealed by its effect, and also leads into the Lord's third effect to special summon itself if a set spell or trap card is activated. Then, if you activated Lord of the Heavenly Prison's effect to special summon itself while it was being revealed by its first effect, you can reveal and set any one spell or trap card directly from your deck, but you must banish it during the end phase of the next turn. While searching for any spell trap is an insanely good effect, Lord of the Heavenly Prison is primarily relegated to trap decks since it can't use both of its effects on the same turn. This has led to it becoming a staple in many gimmick decks, with it even seen some competitive play in modern trap decks for its ability to protect back row and act as a pseudo-starter by searching cards like Conquistador, the Golden Land, and Big Welcome Labyrinth and Eldritch and Labyrinth deck respectively. However, unlike other cards that search and set spell traps from your deck, Lord of the Heavenly Prison has the unique advantage of being able to search continuous spell traps directly from your deck. While at first glance this may seem like it'd be great for searching powerful floodgates like Gozen Match or Skill Drain, Lord's restriction that banishes this set card during the next end phase prevents it from searching kinds of cards that could be used during your opponent's turn. What it enables instead is the Eldritch's various continuous trap monsters as well as powerful cards that support less competitive decks. But if clearing and locking down your opponent's field doesn't sound like enough, then you would be delighted to hear that the best Floodgate Lord can currently search is actually able to clear out your opponent's hand as well. Eradicator Epidemic Virus requires you to tribute a dark monster with 2500 more attack in order to activate, and allows you to declare either spell or trap to look at your opponent's hand, set cards, and cards they draw for 3 turns, and destroy all cards of the declared type. While being able to beat over or crash with the average boss monster is a good place to be as a monster, being able to search and meet the requirement of the activations of Eradicator Epidemic Virus is infinitely better due to the abundance of powerful spell cards in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Labyrinth in particular has the potential to effectively FTK a wide variety of decks using Eradicator to destroy most of, if not their entire hand before they even get a chance to play using Labyrinth Kuklak. And Lord of the Heavenly Prison is great at smoothing out rough situations that would otherwise result in an unresolved Eradicator. Overall, Lord of the Heavenly Prison is a great card due to its flexibility as either a special summonable body that can search any spell or trap, or blanket protection effects for your set cards. though the nuances of this unique self-revealing mechanic contribute heavily to its lengthy text. And extending our way into the number 8 spot is Pendulum Dimension. This is a continuous trap card with 119 words, and 3 hard once per turn effects that can be activated if you special summon the corresponding type of monster using a pendulum monster as a material. If you summon a fusion monster, you can special summon any monster from your deck with the same original level as that fusion monster in defense position, but its effects are negated. If you summon a synchro monster, you can add a polymerization from your deck to your hand. And if you summon an Xyz monster, you can add to your hand or special summon a tuner monster from your deck with a level equal to or lower than that monster's Xyz rank. Trying to unpack what Pendulum Dimension does can be quite confusing upon first glance due to its lengthy text and repetitive wording, but the concept behind the card is actually quite simple. Pendulum Dimension is a combo extender for Pendulum decks that makes it easier to summon a variety of extra deck monsters by searching for the cards that help you make more extra deck monsters when you summon a monster from the extra deck. These searches form a circle where Fusion helps you Xyz summon by special summoning a same level monster from the deck, Xyz summoning helps you synchro summon by special summoning a tuner from the deck, and synchro summoning helps you fusion summon by searching a polymerization from your deck. Pendulum Dimension's text is long and confusing, mostly because Konami doesn't typically print cards where multiple effects only partially share their activation condition, and so they had to invent a way to write this for this card. This is why explaining when each of the Pendulum Dimension's effects can be activated takes up as much room on the card as the effects themselves, since each effect requires an extra deck summon using a Pendulum monster in addition to needing to identify the type of monster summoned. If Pendulum Dimension was a continuous spell card, it would have at least seen experimentation, if not play, as a unique extender in Pendulum strategies due to being searchable with Duelist Alliance. But fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, its practical utility in reality is quite low since it can't be used to extend on your first turn due to being a continuous trap card. And shining through number 7 is Bahalutiya, the Grand Radiance. This is a level 7 light dragon monster, and using 121 words, it describes 3 effects. First is an alternative summoning condition that allows it to be tribute summoned by tributing 1 effect monster despite being a level 7 monster, which would usually require 2 tributes in order to tribute summon. Then if your opponent adds a card from their main deck to their hand during their main phase, except by drawing it, you can activate its effect in hand to immediately tribute summon itself. This will, in turn, activate its last effect, which is a hard once per turn when Bahalutiya is normal or special summon from your hand, which allows you to banish cards from the top of your opponent's deck face down, equal to the amount of cards in their hand. Then have your opponent shuffle their current hand into their deck, then add those cards that were banished face down to their hand. While the way Bahalutiya activates its goal is convoluted and confusing, in practice what it does is force your opponent to draw a new hand while ensuring they cannot draw any of the cards that are currently in their hand. And it's this distinction of preventing your opponent from drawing any cards currently in their hand which is the caveat that makes Bahalutiya's effect so long, since it mechanically has to use the face down banish pile as a holding place for the new hand while they shovel their old one into their deck. Since Bahalutiya can be tribute summoned on your opponent's turn when they add a card from their deck to their hand, the idea is that you can reset your opponent's hand after they search an important card from their deck to prevent your opponent from using that card. While this effect sounds great, especially against extremely powerful limited cards, requiring a tribute summon for its effect to summon itself completely kills Bahalutiya as a card. This makes it expensive to use and prevents it from being used on your opponent's first turn when going second, which is ideally when you would want to use a disruptive effect like it. Since its effect restricts Bahalutiya to being a going first card, it has to compete with other cards that also require a setup turn to do the same thing. Trickstar, Reincarnation, and Present card are far better alternatives to Bahalutiya and can be activated anytime for free as opposed to having to wait for your opponent to search a card from their hand to their deck and then also requiring a tribute. However, if this effect sounded good to you at first, don't worry too much, Konami thought it would be too good too. Despite being utterly outclassed even before release and seeing absolutely no competitive play after, Bahalutiya was printed at the highest possible rarities twice. First as an ultimate rare in the OCG, and then as a Starlight rare in the TCG, with no one except for collectors really carrying either time. While Bahalutiya might take the crown for being the least hyped Starlight rare, it only ties with the next on this list in terms of word count. However, since Bahalutiya is the newer of the two cards, and had more time for its text length to grow with Yu-Gi-Oh's complexity, it will be taking the lower rank. And beckoning for number 6 is Chaos Core. This is a level 3 Dark Fiend with 0 attack and 0 defense and a word count of 121. It has a hard, once per turn quick effect that, when either player activates a card or effect that targets Chaos Core or your opponent targets it for an attack, you can send up to one of each of the 3 Sacred Beasts from your hand or deck to the graveyard. If you do that, you place a Phantasm counter on Chaos Core for each monster sent to the graveyard, and if you place at least one, you take no battle damage for the rest of the turn. This effect also gives Chaos Core a small amount of protection, since if Chaos Core would be destroyed by battle like card effect, you can remove a Phantasm counter from it instead. Out of the Dark Summoning Beasts that support the 3 Sacred Beasts, Chaos Core is without question the worst. The idea behind this card is to stall at your opponent's turn, particularly their battle phase, by placing an indestructible monster on the field, Unfortunately, this protection is nowhere near enough, as Chaos Core loses to any kind of targeted effect negation or non-destruction removal. However, there is another card that does its job quite well in Battle Fader. Upon your opponent declaring a direct attack, you can activate a Battle Fader's effect to special summon itself from your hand and end the battle phase. In fact, Battle Fader is literally a superior version of Chaos Core in every way, since activating from the hand is safer than being exposed in the field, and it even shares its type, attribute, and stats of being a 0/0 Dark Fiend with the other Sacred Beast support cards. While ultimately useless, the main reason Chaos Core's text is so long is its effect that places counters. This kind of effect always requires a lot of text, since both how the counters can be placed and what counters do have to be explained. Then, to make matters even worse, Chaos Core also happens to be support for an unofficial archetype, that archetype being the 3 Sacred Beasts. Since the Sacred Beasts aren't an explicitly named archetype like Branded or Hero, Chaos Core and the rest of the Dark Summoning Beasts have to mention all 3 beasts by name in order to properly work within the archetype. This drastically increases the amount of text these cards have without conveying any real information. For comparison, imagine a Branded Fusion listed every fusion monster with Fallen of Albaz listed as material, instead of just stating that you can use it to summon a fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz as material. This hypothetical version of Branded Fusion would have an exorbitant amount of text, easily making the upper echelons of this list. Despite being filled to the brim with text, at the end of the day, Chaos Core just happens to have some of Yu-Gi-Oh's most bloated effects while not really accomplishing much of anything. And flying casually to number 5 is Blackwing Vata, the Emblem of Wandering. This is a level 2 Darkwing Beast tuner monster with 122 total words, but only has 2 hard once per turn effects. The first of which states that it can be special summoned from your hand if you control Blackwing monster with a different name. Its second effect can be activated while Vata is on the field, and allows it to send itself and 1 or more non-tuner Blackwings from your deck to the graveyard, with total levels equaling 8 to special summon Blackwing Dragon from your extra deck. Using this effect also locks you out of special summoning non-dark monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. Popularly described as Vayu with pants, Vata's first effect to special summon itself is fairly standard and concise as far as Blackwings go, but its second effect is incredibly wordy. It's a very weird effect that effectively describes a synchro summon using itself on the field and monsters from your deck. Vata is effectively a monster version of Branded Fusion, but explicitly for Blackwings and Blackwing Dragon, down to even levying an extra deck lock against the player after using its effect. But providing Blackwings with easy in-archetype access to Blackwing Dragon, Vata allows Blackwings to avoid the downsides of some of their stronger cards that self-inflict damage, while also allowing them to easily extend into their newest boss monster, Blackwinged Assault Dragon. While using Blackwings from deck to synchro summon with Vata is rather simple in concept, describing this effect in a way that functions properly and isn't abusable requires an immense wall of text, landing it squarely on this list. And sailing joyously into number 4 is Plunder Patrollship Jord. This is a level 8 Earth Fiend Pendulum synchro monster with a text length of 143 words and 3 effects, all of which are hard once per turns. While on the field as a monster, if your opponent special summons a monster, you can add any Plunder Patrol card from your deck to your hand. And if Jord is equipped with a Plunder Patrol card, you can also special summon any Plunder Patrol monster from your deck. Jord also has an activated effect to target any Plunder Patrol card in your graveyard and add it to your hand, and if you do, you place Jord into one of your Pendulum Zones. Then, in the Pendulum Zone, Jord can special summon a Plunder Patrol token of any attribute of your choice to both players' fields and defense position by returning itself to the extra deck face down. To understand Plunder Patrollship Jord, you need a bit of extra context regarding Plunder Patrol as a deck. The best way to summon any of the Plunder Patrol ships, which are the deck's primary forms of toolbox interaction and disruption, is with the effect of Blackbeard, the Plunder Patrol captain. However, Blackbeard's effect is restricted to only summoning monsters with the same attribute as a monster either your opponent controls or they have in the graveyard, often requiring you to go second or hope your opponent uses a hand trap in order to summon anything. This made Plunder's success incredibly format dependent, letting it shine when light, fire, and dark monsters were strong, but leaving it struggling when earth, wind, and water monsters led the meta. This format dependency is exactly the issue that Plunder Patrol Jord fixed, as well as what makes its attack so long. Since it summons a token with any attribute of your choice on your opponent's field, you can then use Blackbeard's effect to summon any ship, typically Plunder Patrollship lists, going first regardless of what deck your opponent is playing. Summoning a token to your opponent's field also comes with the added bonus of turning off cards like Infinite Impermanence, Lightning Storm, and Evenly Match, increasing the deck's overall resiliency against modern staples. The fact that Jord also summons a token to your field is icing on the cake that allows Plunder Patrol to build a flexible board that's more up to date with the standards of modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And goes to show just how much a well-designed piece of legacy support can help an aging archetype grow with the times. And at number 3, we have Mamonaka, the Vaylantz United. This is a level 10 Pendulum Fusion monster and requires 3 Vaylantz monsters to be fusion summoned. It has 4 effects that add up to a grand total of 151 words, 2 in the Pendulum Zone and 2 as a monster. Its pendulum effects are shared amongst all the Valiant Pendulum Fusion monsters, allowing it to either special summon itself to the same column or move any monster you control to an adjacent monster zone. If Mamonaka is destroyed by opponent's card effect while in the monster zone, it can place itself in your Pendulum Zone. And as a quick effect, Mamonaka can push an opponent's monster into the spell and trap card zone in the same column by turning it into a continuous spell, destroying any spell or trap cards that are in the way. While the effects of Mamonaka are quite simple in concept and easy to visually understand, they take a lot of text in order to explain how they work both in general and in edge case scenarios. Column-based mechanics can already be fairly wordy on their own, but moving monsters and placing monsters into the spell and trap card zone is what really brings Mamonaka's text over the edge. Despite reading like a small essay, its disruption effect is actually quite good, since turning monsters into continuous spells is a rather unusual form removal that most decks aren't currently prepared for. Recovering a monster from your own spell and trap card zone can be tricky, or sometimes even downright impossible. In some scenarios, having a monster stuck in your back row is just as effective removal as being banished face down. Potentially even more so since it takes up space in one of your 5 available spell and trap card zones. While Mamonaka's disruption is incredible, Vaylantz decks don't play it for a number of reasons. Unlike the other Vaylantz fusions that can summon themselves by tributing high-level Valyants, Mamonaka must be fusion summoned by using the effect of Hojo the Valyant's Warrior or a fusion spell using 3 monsters as materials. While decks will sometimes go through kinds of hoops to summon monsters with incredible effects, material spam combo decks like Valyants value not only the quality of their interruptions, but the quantity of them as well. While you can fuse 3 different Valyant monsters together to make Mamonaka, you could also make Appaloosa Bow the Goddess as the cost of just 1 more material, and often to much more success. Mamonaka the Valyants United is technically tied with the number 2 spot on this list for word count, but loses the release date tiebreaker due to being a much newer card. And swinging to number 2 is Astrograph Sorcerer. This is a level 7 Dark Spellcaster monster with a pendulum scale of 1 and a word count of 151 that's rather evenly distributed amongst its 3 effects. Its pendulum effect allows Astrograph to destroy itself to either special summon or place in your pendulum zone a Stargazer Magician from your hand or deck. And its monster effect on the field allows you to banish Astrograph Sorcerer and Pendulum Dragon, Xyz Dragon, Synchro Dragon, and a Fusion Dragon from your hand, field, or graveyard to special summon Supreme King Zark, with a special summon being treated as a proper fusion summon. Lastly, if a card you control is destroyed by battle or card effect while Astrograph Sorcerer is in your hand, you can special summon it and then choose a monster in your graveyard, extra deck, or banish zone that was destroyed this turn and add another copy of that monster from your deck to your hand. While this last effect is the effect that most players associate with Astrograph Sorcerer, both of its monster effects are guilty of listing every single place a card can be by name to describe which cards are valid targets. This results in a rather repetitive and cluttered block of text that's extremely easy for players to glaze over and miss the fact that neither of its monster effects are once per turns, including its effect to search any card that was previously destroyed. Upon release, Pendulum Magicians were able to make particularly good use of Astrograph Sorcerer's lack of a once per turn on its search. Without going too deep into pendulum combos, triggering Astrograph's effect to summon and search an additional copy of any monster already in your combo rotation is like giving any monster the effect of Destiny Hero Malicious, a card well known for teetering on the edge of potentially broken due to its repeatability. Regardless of the inconsistencies of Electromite's legality, Astrograph Sorcerer rarely appears in modern pendulum decks in both the TCG and OCG, likely due to its limited status in all currently supported formats. And sitting atop the throne at number 1, we have DDD Deviser King Deus Machinex. This is a rank 10 Dark Fiend Pendulum Xyz monster with 3000 attack and defense and a pendulum scale of 10. At a total of 167 words, it has 5 effects. 2 to explain properties that the card has, and 3 that the player can activate and use. King Deus Machinex has an alternative summon condition that allows it to be Xyz summoned using a DDD monster you control as a material, transferring its materials if it was an Xyz monster. And also has a no duplicates clause that states you can only control 1 Machinex. While on the pendulum scale, its pendulum effect allows you to special summon a monster from your pendulum zone by placing a pendulum monster from your graveyard into the pendulum zone. As a monster, it has a once per chain quick effect that when opponent's monster they control has activated its effect, you can either detach 2 materials from Machinex or destroy a dark contract card you control in order to attach that monster to Machinex's material. Lastly, you can place Machinex into your pendulum zone from your monster zone during the standby phase. Machinex has a lot of text simply because the card genuinely does a lot. However, unless you're playing DDD, the most important effect and the only ones you really need to keep track of are its alternative summon condition and quick effect monster removal. This is because outside of DDD, Fiend decks will sometimes use DDD's semi-generic Xyz monsters to make Machinex for additional interaction or as a backup plan. Labyrinth and Unchained can make use of Tour Guide from the Underworld to special summon a level 3 Fiend from the deck to make DDD Stone King Darius, and then Xyz summon a 2 activation Machinex. While Evil Eye will sometimes make it with their in-archetype level 3 monster in a pinch. Labyrinth and Dark World can also use 2 level 4 Fiends to make DD Wave King Caesar, which can then optionally be used to make DDD Marksman King Tell before finally summoning Machinex depending on whether you wanted to have 2 or 3 activations worth of materials. Machinex gives all of these decks access to repeatable quick effect monster removal, with Labyrinth being able to get some of its in-archetype furniture into rotation in the process. Outside of its competitive usage, Machinex is notable for being a DD monster, which is an archetype full of historical and literary references. Deus Ex Machina, the phrase of which the name King Deus Machinex is derived, literally translates from Greek as God from the Machine. It refers to the literary device where an outsider savior appears to a struggling protagonist at the last second and achieves the protagonist's goal with ease, completely nullifying their struggle. An example of this can be seen in The Hobbit when Thorin, Bilbo, and the other dwarves are running frantically from Azog the Orc through a burning forest. And rather than Thorin and co successfully defeating Azog, they are instead saved out of nowhere by the appearance of the yugiohs. If this kind of analysis interests you, you can check out our video analyzing the literary and historical references of the DDD archetype as a whole. In the context of DDD as a deck, this name is likely a commentary on the historical hyper-complex combos that DD is known for. As far back as the archetype's release, players literally made spreadsheets in order to keep track of the optimal DDD lines due to the sheer number of moving parts the deck has. Starkly contrasting the identity of one of the hardest Yu-Gi-Oh decks ever made, King Deus Machinex is incredibly easy to make, and could be seen as the archetype's own version of Deus Ex Machina, providing an easy out whenever things start to go wrong. Alright, and that's the list. This list is meant more as an addendum to the previous list and not as a replacement. So for those interested in more cards with long blocks of text, feel free to check out our previous video on the subject or in the description below where we've included an updated list of cards with high word counts. We also limited the inclusion of pendulum monsters in this list due to their inherent advantage of 2 text boxes, as well as to provide a variety that demonstrates pendulums aren't the only offenders of overly lengthy text in Yu-Gi-Oh! That being said, if there are any cards we may have missed, or if you have any ideas for future videos just like this one, please let us know down in the comments below.